Welcome back. You're watching Wide Angle. We are looking at Prime Minister Manmohan Singh's visit to Myanmar for the BIMSTEC summit and India's Look East policy. Sanjay, if I can come back to you, India's Look East policy, which began with Prime Minister Rao when Dr. Manmohan Singh was the finance minister, how would you assess this? What is the 101 on India's Look East policy?
Well, the 101 on India's Look East policy is that it had a huge impact on our economic engagement with the region. The share of ASEAN and the three major economies of the East, which is China, Japan, Korea, so ASEAN plus 3, the share of these 10 countries in India's trade increased dramatically from 1992 to 2012. In the 20-year period, we have seen a dramatic change. And of course, China has emerged as India's biggest trade partner. But even setting China aside, ASEAN, many of the ASEAN countries, not all of them, but certainly Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore are the three dominant partners, economic partners for India. So in economic terms, the Look East policy has worked well. It delivered the India-ASEAN Free Trade Agreement, which has been an important kind of institutional framework for the trade. We are part of the ASEAN Regional Forum, which is a security institution. And we are now in the ASEAN Defense Ministers Dialogue, we are in the East Asia Summit, etc., etc., etc. Having said all that, I think the problem with our Look East policy is that it was framed in a context where China's emergence was not, in the manner in which it has emerged, was not anticipated. China has really emerged as the most important power in Asia. And we have not been able to keep pace. Today, China dominates the relationship with all these countries. The only country which today has a stronger relationship with India than with China is really Japan, and more for political than economic reasons, because Japan has more investment in China than in India.
And even the trade component is much greater.
Etc. But because of their weak political relationship, in a sense, India has become more important for Japan. Otherwise, all these countries are now so focused on China that there is an element of competition between the two big countries of the region. And I'm afraid we have not been able to keep pace. The general feeling in the region is that India does not have enough time for the region. We compliment ourselves. The other day, I heard a senior Indian diplomat speaking in a conference saying our Look East policy has been a resounding success. Those are the two words he used. That's not the impression in the capitals of the region. Jakarta, Kuala Lumpur, Singapore, Hanoi. The impression is that we could have done much more. But I think partly the problem is that as an economy, we are not kept pace with the others. And so, we should cut our coat according to the cloth. And the Indian economy needs to revive itself before this level of engagement can increase.
And Mr. Tayal, to extend again Sanjay's observation saying that the assessment or the view from the outside is that perhaps India's Look East policy has not been as much of a success as we perceive it to be over here. Now, with your own experience in South Korea and in East Asia, what is it that we need to again do better, and which are the areas? For instance, now India and Japan have had a very, very robust political relationship. We had Prime Minister Abe here. So whether it's trade, economy or maritime and security, which I'll come back to in a moment, what would you highlight as areas where we could do better based on past experience?
First, I would say that really we should call it Look East Policy 2, because from the dawn of the current era, India has had a very robust contact with the entire East right up to Indonesia. When I was in Korea, there was a legend that a princess from Ayodhya went in 48 AD to Korea and married a prince, Kim Siro there. After that, of course, the intellectual engagement through the Buddhist monks going to and fro on both sides. Then the trade from our eastern coast, the Palas and the Pallavas and the Cholas, right up to the 15th century, and which is now reflected in Bali is totally Indian civilization, Borobudur, Angkor Wat, etc. Then with the change of regimes within India and the dominance of the Arab traders, which sort of took over the spice trade from Indian traders perhaps. The whole scenario changed and there was a break from the 15th century. So, it is now a revival of those links, and I think government is trying its level best to engage more and more at a intellectual level and at the civilizational level, whether it is Nalanda University and that kind of concepts are coming. As far as and of course, for LEP as enunciated by Prime Minister Narasimha Rao, the main focus was economic, because South Asia was not going anywhere.
And so much will depend on the degree to which India's own economic vibrancy is
what is our own
engage.
capacity as an investor, that is the limiting factor, not the intention or not the what the government is
But
trying
you know,
to
the other area again, Sanjay, which I am sure you have come across many times when you were traveling in the region and when you were in Singapore, is that India also has a security profile. You know, when we talk about the Look East policy, now in the first 2 decades, clearly the focus was on the trade and economic angles. But whenever we have engaged with interlocutors from the East, they talk about a certain anxiety about the rise of China. Now, India has also been both hesitant and reticent in terms of its security outreach with the region. We are doing a certain amount of limited, I would say, maritime/naval engagement. Even that, I use the word hesitant, because in the early years when Prime Minister Rao was there at the helm, we had this initiative called Milan, you know, meaning that we used to call the navies of the region to come to Port Blair. But the very use of the word Milan, meaning that we only meet, we did not want to get into what I would call as hard military areas, whether it was exercises or otherwise. Now, as an analyst, I'd like to make a case, and I'd ask you gentlemen to critique this and perhaps disagree if you will, that India needs to have a very clear security component to LEP2. That if LEP1 was on trade and economic relations, that LEP2 should be more composite, and we need to introduce both the political dynamic, because today, I mean, no Indian political leader has that comfort level, and please correct me if I am wrong, Sanjay, you know the political spectrum better, that the new approach to India's Look East policy should have these 2 components: greater security engagement and greater comfort level at the political level. Sanjay, how would you respond?
Well, I think first of all, I don't agree that no political leader has that comfort. I think certainly Mr. Antony as Defence Minister has been very weak in pursuing this strategy, which you correctly identify as important. There is in fact a sense of frustration in the last 4 or 5 years, particularly with the nature and extent of our engagement. I was at a very important security dialogue in Singapore recently, where the Singaporean Defence Minister did not even refer to India, while having referred to all the countries of the region. And when he was asked a question from the audience as to why he didn't refer to India, he said, "Oh, but India is an outside power."
Oh my God.
And for Singapore, which trains its air force and its navy with India, we actually have a defence relationship with Singapore. And Singapore is a country that took us into ASEAN. For them to now say India is an outside power tells me that a certain sense of frustration. They know that Indians are not stepping up to the plate. And that's more recent, because I think earlier there was much more engagement. But I think in the last 4 or 5 years, but having said that, there is no question, Uday, that there is an important security dimension to the economic relationship. In fact, there are speeches of Prime Minister Manmohan Singh where he refers to India's naval strategy and the importance of Navy for India's national defence in terms of its economic engagement with the world, the link between maritime interests and economic interests. What are the 2 economic interests? One is the energy link to the West. So, West Asia, ensuring security of energy supplies from West Asia. 2, the safety of our trade. And as I said, our trade with East Asia is increasing by the year. And therefore, India has an interest in ensuring safety of the sea lanes, particularly the Malacca Straits, going all the way up to South China Sea. We do business with Japan, Korea, and even the United States, Canada, etc. So, the idea of this Indo-Pacific as a security network is an important idea, which I think is based on the increasing economic importance of the region for India.
Skand, if I could ask you to come in briefly, the security component, do you think the foreign ministry in India now is both aware and would be able to make the appropriate initiatives as far as LEP-2 that you are talking about is concerned?
The security dimension of LEP-2 is definitely increasing and increasing by the day. Now, what I think the government is trying to do is to have bilateral and sometimes, if possible, trilateral kind of dialogues, which include the security and defense related issues. That is one part. And most of the, in fact, all the ASEAN countries have very high level of trust and confidence with India, and as also Republic of Korea and Japan. Then on the other level, there are Navy ships, Coast Guard ships visiting many of these countries. And regularly our NDC groups go there. Sometimes trainees from those countries come and train at National Defence College, etc. So at that level, there is some interaction.
So we need to build on that.
We need to build on that.
More
and
substance.
I think it's very clear that Government of India and no ministry wants to project itself as a balancer in this kind of situation.
This is what I meant when I said that there is a certain reticence or a certain hesitation in India about projecting itself as having a certain security profile and that it can bring something to the table. We saw this even recently when we had the Indian Ocean and the piracy issue. But hopefully there will be a new team in Delhi by the end of May, and while Dr. Manmohan Singh's visit to the BIMSTEC summit is a very important visit in itself, for it draws attention both to the region, that is Southeast Asia, ASEAN, and the contours of India's Look East policy. I think we have two very useful suggestions here. One, Sanjay, yours, that perhaps we should look at a new semantic, Bob C, as you said, the Bay of Bengal community, and what Skand said, that to have a greater content as far as the security dimension is concerned in India's Look East policy too. Thank you very much, Sanjay and Skand, for sharing your thoughts with us, and thank you for watching Wide Angle. This program will be back on Monday, same time at 10 p.m. Good night.